It's a really beautiful day on the beach here in December, and you might hear the waves because these winter waves are quite loud at times. We're talking today, though, about sahaja and anxiety. And sahaja is a Sanskrit word. It's used in Tibetan, Buddhist, and Indian spirituality, and it means natural. Sahaja is the natural state. Sahaja is your natural state, which is the state of pure being, which has at its core the essences of peace and happiness and pure contentment, profound fulfillment. So we're talking about this today with respect to your true nature, with respect to anxiety, because anxiety seems to be on the increase right now for a lot of people. And there are many reasons why, but I'm hearing about it more and more in the work that I do with people. We're moving really fast, our culture, our world culture, but particularly here in the United States, it's very fast moving. It's very manic at times. And we're getting inundated with so much technology, 4G, 5G, 6, whatever. The information's coming into the body, into the mind, into the nervous system really quickly. And quite frankly, a lot of the work that I've done is around the nervous system and neuroscience, and our nervous systems have a really hard time handling the amount of information coming in from all over the world, let alone how quickly it's coming in. There's other concerns going on with people, financially, with health, with climate change, with the survival of our planet. So there's a lot happening. And it's not surprising that you may be feeling anxious now or at times. And so I want to address that from a non-dual perspective. Because in the realm of non-duality, as with other paths along the lines of Advaita Vedanta, Neo-Advaita, other metaphysical paths, some that I have studied quite in depth, some that I have facilitated over the years, there's a tendency to want to bypass these feelings. And after having been on this journey since my late 20s, so a long time, it doesn't help us to bypass, ignore what's arising. If anxiety is coming up for you, what we want to do from a non-dual standpoint is not say, oh, my natural state, sahaja is pure peace, and then push the anxiety away or pretend like it's not happening or deny that it even arose to begin with. We want to move into a place of non-resistance. This really is the higher path. We're intertwining psychology and spirituality together. When they're intertwined together, they're at its peak performance. Because if you just follow some of the spiritual teachings, you'll be tempted to ignore what you're feeling. And so we need a psychological perspective of what's happening from a human level to understand how to process and then integrate these feelings. If we just focus on psychology without a spiritual perspective, then what you have just focusing in on the problem and not seeing it from a higher perspective. So you see, these two need to come together and stay together for our real awakening and abiding in the truth of who we are. Now, that being said, I'm thinking of a poem that many of you are familiar with called The Guest House. It's one that Rumi wrote. And it's a beautiful poem that really echoes what I'm sharing today. If you're feeling anxious over anything, it's important that you make room for anxiety to have a place at your table. In the poem, The Guest House, he's talking about inviting in all the undesirable feelings, emotions of shame or pain or anger that are arising, allowing them to come into your home, to sit at your table, to make room for them. And so the tendency for some of us is, oh, I don't like that feeling, and so I'm just going to numb out. I'm going to get really busy, or I'm going to numb out using whatever form that you use to numb out. It could be alcohol, it could be weed, it could be food, it could be shopping, it could be whatever. That's sometimes the tendency. But the real growth, the real deepening for you and for me, for all of us on this planet, is to make room for these feelings that are not very comfortable. I promise you, if you make room for them, if you can open up the space for these feelings to arise, you will move through that feeling, and on the other side of that is the peace that is your true nature. You see, when these feelings arise, once they have risen, they're already in your field of awareness. So at that point, you only have a few choices. You can either try to ignore them, you can try to numb them, or you can succumb to them. And we're not talking about becoming a victimhood. I'm not talking about succumbing to feelings. I'm not talking about grabbing onto them and identifying with them. I'm talking about making space for them. And when you make space for them, then they have a chance to be integrated. And then on the other side of that feeling is the truth of your nature. What's happening is when feelings arise like anxiety, we kind of wonder, well, where did the peace go? Say you have been meditating or doing some form of spiritual practice, and you've been abiding in that realm of pure peace. And then the anxiety comes up. And maybe this is a conditioned response from many, many years ago. Maybe it's coming from old trauma. Wherever it's coming from doesn't really matter. The fact is, it is now in your field of awareness. So temporarily it appears, it's just an appearance, as though the peace and the contentment and the happiness that we are seems to be blocked. You know, we hear the metaphor a lot of the clouds blocking the sun. The sun didn't go anywhere. You see behind me, there's puffy clouds, and they've gone over the sun, but the sun has never gone anywhere. And even when the shade of the sky goes from blue to maybe a grayish blue, the sun's still there, right? Your sahaja nishta, your natural state, is not marred, cannot be damaged in any way by any feeling that you have, no matter how intense it might be. You could be out and out anger, rage, hatred, whatever it might be. It cannot harm the truth of who you are. It's just, again, these feelings are coming up and they need to be expressed. They need to be on some level, they're expressing themselves. On some level, they need to be welcomed. It's not any different than your nighttime dreams. We've talked about this before. I've done a lot of work. There's several videos on my channel on nighttime dreams. Every dream character is an aspect of you. And so that's why I love helping people work through their nightmares, which can be very challenging for some people, because the most disturbing dream characters, the most repulsive, are the ones that have the most to say. So we want to connect with them. We want to befriend these characters that when we wake up from the dream and we look back at the dream, we go, oh God, thank God that was just a dream. We want to actually invite those dream characters to meet us at the table, make space at the table, to hear, to understand with warmth and courage and generosity what they're trying to convey to us. The same thing is true for your feelings, your emotions. Those disturbing thoughts, you're going to hear some of the spiritual teachers encourage you, just ignore them, just ignore them. Well, you can ignore them, and what happens? They keep coming back. They'll get louder. If you push against them or ignore them, they're going to get louder. What happens is nightmares are a result of numerous dreams trying to communicate a message to you that you really didn't want to hear or maybe didn't understand. And then it shows up as a nightmare. It's like, knock, knock. Here I am at your door and I'm not going anywhere. Now I'm showing up as a nightmare. So now I'm going to get your attention by triggering some fear so you'll really look at it. The same thing is true with our emotions. So I'm not suggesting, for those of you who've been on the non-dual path for a while, you're going to say, well, wait a minute, that's not our true nature. Well, no, it's not. But it's part of our human experience. And we're here having this experience in finite form, in the form of the body and the mind, for a reason. And so we don't want to ignore the experience. So again, I'm just suggesting that you invite these feelings that are rising in your awareness, like anxiety, just to make room for them. You can dialogue with them. What's anxiety trying to communicate today? What is it that I'm really afraid of? But see, here again, we're not identifying with the anxiety. We're not saying, I am an anxious person. Because then I would question, are you? Are you an anxious person? Or are you experiencing anxiety right now? There's a big, big difference. Saying I'm an anxious person and living from that place is tipping into victimhood, which is a prevalent archetype on this planet. We don't want to live in victimhood. That's not our natural state, not being a victim. However, we don't want to deny what's coming up either. So as I wind down here, I just want to invite you to create the space at the table to include every part of your human experience to come into your awareness, and not to push away or to grab onto any of it, but just to be with it, to see what it's trying to convey. And you know what? I brought the poem with me because I don't want to share the whole thing. But if you're not familiar with The Guest House by Rumi, it ends like this. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Be grateful for whoever comes, any feeling, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Thank you so much. Namaste.